One night at 11:30 p.m., an older African-American woman was standing on the side of an Alabama highway trying to endure a lashing rainstorm. Her car had broken down and she desperately needed a ride. Soaking wet, she decided to flag down the next car. A young white man stopped to help her, which was generally unheard of in those conflict-filled days of the 1960s. The man took her to safety, helped her get assistance, put her into a taxi cab. She seemed to be in a very big hurry, but she wrote down his address and she thanked him. 7 days went by and a knock came on the man's door. To his surprise, a giant console color TV was delivered to his home. A special note was attached. It read, "Thank you so much for assisting me on the highway the other night. The rain drenched not only my clothes, but also my spirits. Then you came along. Because of you, I was able to make it to my dying husband's bedside just before he passed away. God bless you for helping me and unselfishly serving others. Sincerely, Mrs. Nat King Cole." Now, if you're old enough to remember the 1960s, you know that Nat King Cole was one of the great voices of that era. That young white man was quite courageous back in the 60s in Alabama, and Mrs. Cole was certainly quite fortunate. There's a poignant scene from the novel All Quiet on the Western Front. It's the continuing story of Paul, one of the 7 German soldiers who have bonded together through the hardships of war. When his last companion, last of the 7 to survive except for himself, is wounded in the shin, he carries him on his back even though he was a large man. He carries him through the shell fire to a nursing station. But suddenly and unaccountably, he discovers that his companion is dead. He realizes there had been a second wound that was unnoticed, a tiny splinter from a shell lodged in his head. Paul is unable to speak. He's so overcome, and the orderly at the nursing station is kind of confused because death is so commonplace in the war. So he finally asks Paul, "You're not related, are you?" And Paul stops and thinks, and finally he says, No, we're not related. No, we're not related." Paul is stunned. He's stunned because he knows we are all related. German and French, English, Russian, American, and everyone else. Paul's awareness in that moment is the challenge of this feast day this weekend. We are all related. The great writer John Donne sees all mankind as a continent, and he reminds us that no man is an island. And we have that great quote, "Do not ask for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." When someone dies, when anyone dies, the bell tolls for all of us. We celebrate this weekend Corpus Christi, the body of Christ. We celebrate that we are all the body of Christ. Black or white, Asian or American, Jew or Muslim, gay or straight. We celebrate that our God sent his Son for all of us and tells all of us that we belong, that we are all included. And the challenge of this feast day comes from this, this phrase that's repeated every time that we enter into Eucharist. The phrase is repeated by the priest at the altar, "Do this in memory of me." Well, do what? Realize that I came for you. I broke my body, I spilled my blood to show you how much the Father loves all of his creation. And the challenge that comes from that, "do this in memory of me," is to do the same thing that I've done for you. You do it for each other. Sacrifice for each other. Take care of each other. And if you have to let your bodies be broken and your blood be spilled for one another, this is the price I paid, the Lord tells us. This is the price my followers have to pay. Certainly you as parents who are parents know this. You bring children into the world and you pay a great price. You sacrifice for them. And at some point, you have to let them go. You cannot hold on to them. They are not yours. Married couples know this. The wedding day is a marvelous day, but it never prepares you for the price that you have to pay to create that marriage. It never prepares you for the sacrifices you must make to have what is a real marriage. Parenting and marriage constantly demand hearing that command, "Do this in memory of me." Certainly single life, priesthood, religious life have the same challenges and hear the same message. There are so many times when we are all challenged to pay the price of the commitments that we make with family, with marriage, with vocation. And beyond the commitments that we make, each one of us has been gifted with life. And the challenge is that we are all parts of humanity. We are all connected to one another. We are not separate from one another. We are constantly called to do for the least of our brothers and sisters what we wish to have done for us. We do not walk this earth alone. We are joined together in a common family. That young man back in the 1960s in Alabama realized this when he assisted the wife of Nat King Cole. We see it in the famous novel about war. And each one of us is challenged with that every single day of our lives. So none of us need to ask for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for all of us when anyone is hurt or sick or dying. We are all the body of Christ. And each one of us is consistently challenged, "Do this in memory of me." Do what? Sacrifice for the common good. And John Donne says it so well in his poem. No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of a continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is less. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee.